stimulating your mind. Alright. Here on Fahrenheit Radio, it's about getting you what you need. You know, the message just needs to get across. So with no further delay, we bring Big J and DE's Urban Watch.
He just talking, you listen. 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 He just talking, you listen.
Hey, this is Big J. Thank you for tuning into Urban Watch. We thank you for checking back with us and spending an hour with us this evening. Tonight we're going to bring you brother Dr. Umar Johnson, who is a certified school psychologist who practices privately in the state of Pennsylvania here in the United States. He also lectures throughout the country. He's also a descendant of Frederick Douglass, who was one of the great abolitionists for freeing black people from the bondage of slavery in the 1800s. In this speech, Dr. Johnson talks about many different things. Interestingly enough, he also talks about our current president, Barack Obama, the school system, the economic system, even medical treatments given to our young children. So please sit back, open your ears and minds to the words of brother Dr. Umar Johnson. Peace.
That's worth knowing about. And when you reduce Africa to Egypt, or Kemet, or Sudan, or Ethiopia, Ta-Mary, Ta-Nehesi, Al-Kibalan, whatever you want to call it, you risk inculcating in the minds of black children that the only thing Africa ever gave to the world that was great was something 5,000 years ago. And so you neglect the whole rest of the entire continent, and you focus on Egypt. And the reason we do that is because white people focus exclusively on Egypt. So we feel that we have to follow them and defend that territory of ours because they are there. To make a long story short, or to say it another way, we are still being led by Europeans, proactively or reactively. Because wherever we are, in education, political science, psychology, business, economics, community development, it's only at the bequest or the example of the European. Very important that we understand that. Ingredient number one, particularly in middle school and high school, you do not have a meaningful trade program in any black high school, public or charter. And what I mean by that, black boys and girls are not being taught how to use their hands. Why is that important? Because in a situation like we're facing now, with the economic situation in America, although it has always been bad for black people, a lot of us can't make a living because we don't know how to do anything outside of an institution that's controlled by Europeans. In other words, young black boys and girls don't know how to do electric work. They don't know how to do plumbing, brick masonry, computer networking, wood carving. The types of things that would allow you to feed yourself and your family on the corner selling your things outside. Roofs start leaking, you got to call an electrician or a plumber. That could be a $1,500 job for 45 minutes worth of work. But the situation in Philadelphia is such that if you need that work, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be calling on the European because they have monopolized the trades. They have monopolized the trades. And what they did was they took plumbing and auto shop, and they took electricity and heating, air conditioning, and cooling. They took them out of the black public schools. This has been going on for a process of 30 years. Took them out of the black public schools. Never took them out of the white ones though, right? And then once they were totally out of the black schools, you then start seeing a preponderance of white men working on the construction sites. And then when the question is asked, why are there no black men or women working on these sites as skilled, not unskilled? Not unskilled. Because unskilled is uninsured, $8 an hour, you clean off the bricks if you get hurt, there's no workman's comp. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the $42 an hour jobs. The skilled labor, the excuse is, y'all don't have the certification. Y'all don't have the paperwork to do what needs to be done. It's the same excuse that they use for everything. But what nobody talks about is why we don't have the paperwork. Nobody looks at that. We don't have the paperwork because you stopped training our kids. I was told, personally, by a member of the School Reform Commission, that the reason the trades are not back in the high schools is because the white unions don't want them there. I was told this personally. I was told this personally by a member of the School Reform Commission. We can't put them back because the unions don't want us back. The electric union, the plumbing union, they don't want it. They like the monopoly. See, one thing that we're failing to realize with this whole black on black over-incarceration epidemic is partly fueled by miseducation and the lack of economic opportunity. It is the economic castration of black men that leads to the drug selling, that leads to the turf fighting, that leads to the death, and that leads to prison. We got to understand that. So whenever there's going to be a trial for any young man who's been accused of taking somebody else's life, I think that the school district of Philadelphia and the mayor of the city as the economic head should be in the trial as an accomplice to the crime. Because had it not been for the hand that they played in it, the crime would have never took place. Now, I'm not saying you're going to eliminate every drop of black crime by proper education and economic opportunity. I'm not saying that. But I am confident that you will cut it in half at least. Because most crime is economic, no matter how you look at it. They are economic crimes. A couple of months ago, I did a prison tour for the city of Philadelphia Department of Volunteer Services. I went to every prison in the city. And I talked to the brothers. And nearly every situation, even when it turned into violence, started with economics. Every single situation. Every single situation. And believe it or not, there's thousands of black men and women who are being arrested for nothing other than shoplifting. They're giving them years for shoplifting. Right. A pack of gum, a stick of toothpaste. Right. They're giving them years for that. Why? Because prison in America is a private industry. It is one of the fastest growing on Wall Street.
Yes. Right. Yes.
And you all know that in the capitalist system, whenever you have a product, you got to go out and create the demand for the product. And one thing that we don't look at, the reason why Bill Clinton gave you 3 strikes and you out, the reason why he gave you mandatory minimums is because one of the highest campaign contributions made to Bill Clinton was from a Texas private prison firm. One of the highest he got. So he who pays the tune, pays the fiddler, calls the tune. The same thing holds true for Barry Soweto, who changed his name to Barack Obama. 2 years ago, the black community didn't know that man. The first time you seen Barry Soweto was at Hurricane Katrina. When they blew up the levee, when they blew it up. And what had happened was the levees had filled so much that they had to make a decision. And it happened twice before in New Orleans history. You either going to blow this levee up, let the water run through and flush out the rich whites, or you're going to blow up this levee and let the water run through and flush out the blacks. Because if you don't blow one or the other, everybody goes. So the decision was made to blow up the levee in the 8th, 9th Ward. And when you look at Spike Lee's, and I'm not a fan of him, but when you look at the movie he did on Katrina, he had an excess of individuals who said they heard the explosion before the water ran. And then they put Negroes on there to say that that's not true, they heard something else. There is nothing like an explosion if you ever heard one. It can't be mistaken for anything else. They blew it up and then they let the water run. So anyway, George Bush and Bill Clinton were sent down there to shake hands with the black victims to comfort them in their filth. But before they could go down there, Barry Soweto, aka Barack Obama, who was in Russia at the time, was called from Russia. By the way, he was doing business for the Council of Foreign Relations, of which he and his wife are both members. Okay? And if you belong to the Council of Foreign Relations, you are only about the exploitation of Africa, period, because that's why it was established. He and his wife are members. He was called from Russia to come back to New Orleans to accompany. Now this is 05. This is August 05. Okay? He was called back to accompany George Bush and President Clinton. The last two and Obama go to New Orleans together to shake hands. Now my question to you is, Why is it that a little known black senator from Chicago, and he's not from Chicago, he moved there, we'll get into that later. But why would a little known state senator from Chicago be told to go to New Orleans with the last 2 U.S. presidents? You do the math. It's because they chose them before you knew them. But the problem is we don't think. The propaganda of the media sweeps up black people every 4 years, and we fall for the same nonsense every 4 years. So if we thought that Bill Clinton was a black president, they knew if they gave you somebody who was a half Negro, you would really lose your mind.
Right.
You would really lose your mind. And by the way, Bill Clinton has been inducted in the Arkansas Black Hall of Fame. He's the first white person in history to be inducted in the Arkansas State Black Hall of Fame. Yes, he is. Show me a black person in the Jewish Hall of Fame, Italian Hall of Fame, Polish Hall of Fame, Anglo Hall of Fame, you won't find it. Arab Hall of Fame, Asian Hall of Fame, you won't find it. But when you go back to our history, be it slavery or colonialism, because not everybody suffered through slavery, but everybody went through white supremacy, one of the chief things that we've been taught that we never got out of, and the #1 goal of slavery, colonialism, white supremacy is to turn the victim into a willing accomplice in your own extermination. Turn the victim into a willing accomplice in your own extermination. I read an article the other day. They said by 2050, white people will be a minority in America. Okay? By 2050, Hispanics and Mexicans and Asians will outnumber white people. So what? They have been a minority on the planet since the beginning of existence. What did it have to do with the power differential between Africans and Europeans? Nothing. Numbers don't mean nothing unless you put them to work. They have always been a minority. But who runs the economy? Nobody but them. White males are 46% of college-age students. 46, that's less than half. But they are 96% of the CEOs, 96% of the principals, 95% of partners at the law firms. So when you look at white supremacy, it might change shape, it might change form, but it never changes substance. It never changes substance. And the problem with Obama, with black people, is that we can't look beyond the surface of his skin tone. Nobody bothered to ask who dressed him up and put him out there. Are you not aware that this man in 12 years, which makes him the fastest of all time, went from a little-known state senator in a heavy black district of Chicago running for the presidency? Running for the presidency. He's been in the Senate for 3 years. He's been running for president for 2 of the 3, which means he's only been doing work for 1 year. What black man you know could run for president of the United States and have only been active as a senator for a year? Why is it in 2004 the Democratic National Convention gave Barack Obama the keynote speech? He was only a state senator. State senators never give keynote addresses at the political national convention. Not even the white ones. But he did it as the state senator of Chicago. Why? Because they chose him before you knew him. And by giving him the 04 speech, it guaranteed that he would beat Alan Keyes for the U.S. senatorial spot from Illinois, and then the rest was history. See, when Obama moved to Chicago, he tried to unseat former Black Panther Bobby Rush. Bobby Rush blew him out the water in the election. He told him he would spank him and then spanked him. In fact, he said something to the effect, who the hell does white boy think he is coming into my district? He don't know the first thing about black people. He was raised as a white man. And then he spanked him. So the Democratic Party stepped in and said, he's not going to make it if we leave it up to his own merit. So they gave him the DNC keynote. And so he didn't even have to worry about being a state senator no more, because in a few months he was running for U.S. senator, the 3rd in history. Now when we look at the financial backing of Obama, you see that his #1 campaign contributor happens to be the only bank on Wall Street that hasn't floundered. Goldman Sachs has given Barack Obama more money than everybody else put together. Most of his contributions did not come from poor people on the street. It came from rich, white, old money. Rich white old money. Don't listen to what they tell you on CNN. CNN is owned by the corporations. You got to do the research. Why is Goldman Sachs the most powerful bank on Wall Street, the United States chief investor abroad? Why are they putting so much money behind this half Negro? Why? Because they know that the families that run America have been eyeing Obama for the past 4 years because they see something in him that would allow them to take white supremacy to the next level. Because black people in Asia don't think no more than we do. And black people in Africa don't think no more than we do. In fact, I gave this same speech in Nigeria 3 months ago, and they looked at me like I was crazy. You got Obama maniacs in Africa too, who think that if Obama is elected president, he's going to stop the World Bank and International Monetary Fund from stepping on Africa's throat. You got black people in America, although he hasn't said one thing about us this whole 2 years, he ain't mentioned black people. But we think that he's going to change the schools, even though schools are run by the state. We think he's going to do something about prison, even though prisons are run by the state. In fact, most of what affects you on a daily basis is state sanctioned, not federal. And there's something called states' rights that evolved during the civil rights era, where the government in D.C. is told to keep their hands off certain things. But even if he could, Barack Obama isn't interested in helping black people because he don't see himself as that. Biologically, he might be an African, but consciously, he's all European. And we fail to realize that. If you take out the fact that his father, who he never knew, was a Kenyan, you get a white man. Trained at the best schools. Grew up in a middle-class neighborhood. And when you read his 2 autobiographies, and most Obama maniacs have not, he tells you clearly that I'm not for affirmative action, I'm not for reparations, I'm not for an apology for slavery, which he reiterated last month in an exclusive TV interview. What black man could be against reparations, against an apology for slavery, and against affirmative action? To be against all three automatically necessitates that he's the enemy of his own race. Automatically. But the Obama maniac camp would say, give him some time. In fact, we're the only race of people who have been conditioned to think that it's okay for the leadership to sell you short. The only group, if Obama was an Asian, he would not have ignored his people this long, or something would have happened to him by now. If he was an Arab, it's impossible. Only with Negro leadership can you ignore your whole constituency and still be treated like a great person. At the acceptance speech on King Day, anniversary of the March on Washington, he called the homosexuals his brothers and sisters. Our homosexual brothers and sisters, as he said, are entitled to the same rights as everybody else. He talked about poor whites and how affirmative action doesn't help them. He talked about women and how they get shortchanged. He talked about Hispanics and how hate crimes against Hispanics have been going up through the roof. But he failed to mention that the #1 recipient of hate crimes in America has always been and continues to be black people. But it never comes out his mouth. Never comes out his mouth. See, I don't expect Obama to wave a fist. I'm not saying that. Of course you can't go out there and wave a fist, but you should speak to us as much as you speak to anybody else. We're not asking for more, we're asking for equality. But for a so-called black man to ignore his people for 2 years, not go to one black school, one black elementary school. The only black churches he go to is the ones that already sold the hell out. What black context has he ever been in and you've seen him talking? One time he got caught in a community meeting in Florida and a group of brothers jumped up and started shouting questions at him. What is in your program for us? And they got arrested and thrown out the jail. Only time he got caught. Because he has nothing to say to you or for you. And I will say this on his behalf. If they choose him, and 95% it looks like they will. If they choose him and he does nothing for black people, you cannot complain. Why? Because you never asked him a single question about his agenda for the race.
That's right.
Nobody asked Obama one question, any interview, letter, or nothing about what his plans were for black people. So when he gets in and does nothing, at the end of the day, technically speaking, he cannot be held accountable. He can literally say, I never promised y'all nothing. You can't put that on me. In fact, Tavis Smiley, who's an integrationist himself, but he got upset because Tavis invited Obama to one of the black town halls. He rejected it. Then he invited him on Channel 12 for that one-on-one interview for his talk show. He rejected it. In fact, many people believe the reason why Tom Joyner got rid of Tavis Smiley, because he had a talk show on Joyner Station, they say Tom Joyner got mad because Tavis Smiley kept on bad-mouthing Obama for not showing up on the black town hall meeting discussion. And he's an integrationist and he was pissed off. You see? But my point is, with presidential politics, when you study your history, is that no president in America has attempted to or has ever helped black people. In fact, the two names that you always get is Abraham Lincoln and JFK. Now, if you've ever read anything on either two of these white men, you'll see that they never cared about black people and never would have done anything for them unless they were forced to do so. Abraham Lincoln did not free a soul. The Emancipation Proclamation, the preliminary and the final, was issued to slaves in states that had already rebelled from the Union. That's like Russia telling Georgia to let your slaves go free when Georgia don't recognize them as being subservient to Russia. So basically it's empty language. The slaves are the ones who saved Lincoln and the Union. After the Battle of Gettysburg, even though they won it, they were exhausted. And so Frederick Douglass, Martin Delany, Henry Highland Garnett, Harriet Tubman, and others told Lincoln that if you don't let the Negro in, you're going to lose your whole damn country. And so they let the blacks in, and within a year, we had took care of the whole thing. In fact, even racist generals of the Civil War said had it not been for the Negro, we would have lost the state. Jefferson Davis of the Confederacy said that if it wasn't for them, they would have lost. So how could you free us when you were losing and we came to your aid? That makes absolutely no sense. But this is what we teach to our black kids, public school and charter. Public school and charter. Now, why am I saying that there's a chance Obama won't win, given the fact that Goldman Sachs, which is a manager of the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank. You understand? So you have a secret family backing Obama. And that's why Hillary could not have gotten the nomination. And she knew ahead of time she wouldn't have gotten the nomination because her husband, Bill Clinton, is a member of the Bilderberger family, which is another secret white financial family. So what you are watching on television is nothing but smoke screen. It has nothing to do with the real election. Let's go back to 2000. Al Gore versus George Bush. They throw out 18,000 black votes, and black people go crazy. Al Gore didn't say a word, but you went crazy. That wasn't even an issue, black people. Al Gore still had 500,000 more popular votes than Bush without the 18,000 black Florida votes. So why was he not president anyway? Because the Electoral College chose George Bush by 2 electoral votes. And he became president because he won the electoral vote, not the popular. The popular ain't never chose nothing in America. Never! When you go down to the Constitution Center, Market Street, and you do the tour to the room where they have all the signers hall, they got white statues of all the signers of the Declaration of Independence, most of whom were slave masters. There is a replica of the bookshelf that was in Independence Hall. Take a good look at the replica of the bookshelf that's in the Constitution Center. You will see Machiavelli's The Prince several times on it. Why would Machiavelli's The Prince be a famous read of the signers of the Declaration of Independence? Because political trickery is the essence of European politics. And they knew that when they created the Constitution, they had to make the people think that you was in control. while at the same time saving rule for the white power elite. And that's why in the beginning you had to be rich and a white male and a property owner to vote. Guess what? You don't get to the electoral college unless you're a rich, white male property owner. It's never changed. All you have is what I call the illusion of inclusion. You got 40 million black people thinking that they have a say in something that's white. And you get people like Jesse, Messy Jesse, as Dr. Khalid would call him, got you thinking that if white people are split over a candidate, 40 million black people can determine who wins by putting a 40 million behind one candidate, assuming you're organized, which we're not. That's another discussion. But what he failed to realize is black people will never be allowed to select any leader of significance in America, whether you use 40 million votes or one. Because the essence of America in all of Europe, and this is just Europe's Western extension, is white supremacy. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. White supremacy is simple, but black people still don't understand it. You had a century of colonialism. You've had a half a millennium of white supremacy, a half a millennium of slavery, and we still don't understand white supremacy. It's simple. White people will always be on the top, and black people will always be on the bottom, regardless of who we put out front. In Philadelphia, you have your third Negro mayor. But has it resulted in an increase in jobs for black men? No. Has it resulted in an improvement in schools? No. Has it resulted in an increase in contracts for the talented 10th who don't care about nobody but themselves anyway? No. Because Michael Nutter is the face on the white supremacy structure of Philadelphia. Like Obama will be nothing but the face on white supremacy of the country at large. And there is a paradox to this too. We got to understand that the ascendancy of the black elected official has concurred with the decline of the black community where they rule. Look at black mayors and lieutenant governors and a few governors that you've had, and wherever they win, the black people do worse. Why? Because when you have a powerless black face, there can be no cry of racism. And when there can be no cry of racism, white people can operate freely behind that black shield. And so if Obama wins, you will see more police brutality. If Obama wins, you will see more black men in prison. If Obama wins, you will see more HIV victims. If Obama wins, you will see more black males in prison. Because whenever you have the black face, there is the illusion of Negro control. And whenever you have the illusion of Negro control, white folks are free to do whatever the hell they want to do. And that's why under John Street, North Philadelphia and West Philadelphia was given back to the white people. And one thing you got to understand about white supremacy, they're very organized. What do I mean by that? When white people decided 10 years ago that they was going to take back over Philadelphia, they had to bring in the city, they had to bring in the school district, they had to bring in the prisons, they had to bring in the police. What am I saying? The incarceration of black men in Philadelphia coincides with the need for them to be taken off the streets to pave way for whites coming back home. Do you know that 2 years ago the school district of Philadelphia, and I know because I was still working with them, created a center city region. When the whites said that they were coming back, and Miss Smith was a former educator, okay? They gave the white people a district of their own in Center City and blocked the blacks out. And nobody talked about it. And nobody talked about it. So right now, in Center City, what they used to influence whites to come back is to say your children can go to school and you ain't got to worry about the niggas. I'm giving you the facts. And what makes it so sickening is last week, I don't know if you heard about it, Darryl Clark, Councilman Clark, who John Street found on the street, fixed him up, cleaned him up, made him an assistant. And I know him well because when I came out of undergrad in '97, I was looking for a job before I went back for my master's. So I had the ward leader set me up with an appointment to meet with Darryl Clark at City Hall. He was, at the time, councilman for North Philly. He took over Street's district when Street became mayor. I'm talking to him about a job, and this man is telling me about, take care, good brother. Let me give you this flyer too. This one. Listen. But anyhow, he's telling me why I shouldn't consider running for city council. I'm not interested anyway, I don't do that. But he thought I was coming to scope out his job and take it. But let me get to the point of my story. Last week, Daryl Clark woke up. He live in North Philly because you're required to live where you represent. If they get rid of that law, none of your black elected officials will be in the hood. They're only there because they're required. He woke up and came outside, and his car was spray painted KKK with a swastika. I don't know if y'all saw it. It was on the front page of the Daily News last week. Daryl Clark, Councilman Clark, from that North Philly district, woke up last week and somebody spray painted KKK and a swastika on his car in North Philly. His friend who lives in Fishtown came outside his house. Guess what? Same thing across Broad. Same thing, same night. But my point is, getting back to white supremacy. White supremacy is not practiced on an individual basis. It's a group dynamic. So whether you are a total house Negro or totally committed to your race, the treatment is the same. My point being, even though Daryl Clark helped the white people take over North Philly, even though he gave Temple as many blocks as they wanted, they still, at the end of the day, view him as a nigga. And to prove it, the same people who he brought back spray painted his damn car in the middle of North Philly. Look at the irony of that. You sold us out for them, and they still did you dirty. And one thing that is so difficult to convince, particularly college-educated blacks, because most of my day is spent interacting with them, and that Negro population is probably the most interesting species on earth. Because they've been out of the hood for 4 to 8 years. 4 to 8 years, and in 4 to 8 years, Harvard and Penn and even Lincoln and Howard and Cheney, okay, because most of them were started with white money, and that's not a knock against the black college. I'm not knocking them. In fact, I'm speaking at Cheney next week, but I want to make it clear that when you rely on white money, even when you're an independent so-called black institution, you got to dance to the curriculum that they dictate. For example, Howard University in Washington, D.C. is the #1 recruiting center for the FBI and CIA for black people. Let me say it again. Howard University, which I love, is the #1 CIA and FBI recruiting black institution in America. More CIA and FBI agents come out of Howard University than any other school, black or white. So what I'm saying is, the reason we have these issues is because there's no independence about us as a people. None. In fact, I was reading the news on my phone today, and they were talking about white people and what they got to say about Obama. Now keep in mind, popular votes don't choose nobody, so that's irrelevant. But to get to the racism of the matter, they were talking about how 7 out of 10 Democrats are not going to vote for him simply because he's black. Simply because he's black. Now remember, he ain't claimed us at all for 2 years. But they still know what he is. We are the only people who think that if we kiss and dance and scratch, somehow they will forget the obvious texture of your skin. It's never happened in world history. In fact, if they forgot, they wouldn't have created AIDS and Ebola and West Nile and whatever else coming up down the street next week to get rid of you. They wouldn't have created Ritalin and Prozac and Strattera, all of which destroys the black male's ability to produce healthy semen in his testicles. So you give a black boy Ritalin at 3, and by the time he's 21 and ready to make a child, he can't. Because the drug destroys semen production. And that's coming directly from the Food and Drug Administration. But you go to any one of these schools, and I've worked in every one, and half the black boys in any classroom is taking some form of psychotropic medicine. Yes, it's called Nugenics.
When they started the ADHD, that diagnosis back in the 80s, that's when they started doing that shit. Excuse me, dog.
That's where the ADHD comes from.
So it's the Tuskegee experience.
It's the new Tuskegee.
That's right.
And it's worse than the first one. Because the first one had a stop date. The first one, you understand, nobody knew what they was up to. Everybody know what this is, and black mothers and fathers are still walking their kids on down there. See, when the community infrastructure breaks down, the enemies can invade. And you can easily get to the community by destroying its children. And so you get to the boy, you get to the girl, and the future is over. People are only as good as the seeds that they have, which makes the black woman the most important entity in the community, because she is the first teacher of that child. And whenever she give that boy or that daughter, that's what they're going to give to the world. So if she raises them to be an integrationist, then that's going to be their thoughts for the rest of their life. If she raises them to be an independent thinker, that's what they're going to be for the rest of their life. But the problem is we don't invest in our women, we don't invest in our girls. We disrespect them, and we allow young men to disrespect them in front of our faces. In fact, one of the biggest reasons why young brothers have went crazy is because the older men are scared of their own damn sons. And I know it because I've seen it. I've been in schools where little teeny-weeny boys curse their big black fathers out in front of white people. I ain't never seen that growing up. My grandfather would have took his cane and beat me. They will curse their fathers out. Now, whenever a boy can rebel against his father's authority like that, community is over. Because now the children run the neighborhood. And the drug dealers run the neighborhood. In fact, I know at least 20 blocks where the drug dealers pay for everybody's prom, and they play for the block party every year. And if you're running late on your gas or electric, they'll flip it. And I don't want to demonize the drug dealer. Why? Because he is only trying to survive in the socio-economic order in which he was birthed. And so we got to understand that in the black community, there is a political food chain. Everybody is a victim and everybody is a perpetrator. And we got to realize that whenever we look at a crime, no matter how bad, that person, although a perpetrator in that instance, had probably been a victim 100 times before that. The young black man who shot the police, it came out later that he had mental health needs that never got addressed. I work with young men who are, rapists and molesters and child abusers. But a part of me got to be empathetic. You want to know why? Because half of them was raped and molested and child abused. So it's the cycle, y'all. And everybody goes through that cycle. And so the thing is, we got to step in to be able to stop it so it doesn't keep on wrecking the happen. But that's a hard thing to do. Because in order for you to organize black people, first of all, they got to want to be black, and most of us don't want to be. I had a conversation with a white girl a couple weeks ago. She wanted to join my organization. I told her she couldn't. And she went into this whole Elijah Muhammad thing. I said it has nothing to do with me hating you or this or that. I said, in fact, Elijah Muhammad wasn't a race hater either. Okay, he was just dealing with the facts as they were. And I said, the reason why you can't be in my organization, because whenever white people come into something, number one, y'all don't come with an attitude of humility. You come to rule it. And if you don't believe me, look at any black organization, Urban League, NAACP, UHURU, or any of the other ones who let white people in. Look at the positions that those people are in. They are in leadership. White people do not come amongst blacks unless they are ruling them. Look at white people at the black schools. They are the chairs of the departments. Look at the white teachers in a black public school. They're the principal. If they're not the principal, they're the grade leader. They run things. It is their nature and their culture. More importantly, though, what I told her, because you would never run anything in something I'm doing, but your mere presence will infect the need for self-determination amongst black people. Whenever white people are amongst us, we automatically look to them for leadership and finance. And I said, there is no way I'll be able to get my people to do something for themselves and by themselves if you're there. Why? Because if we stumble, we're going to expect you to pick up the change. We're going to expect you to pick up the change. Because deep within the psyche of the black man and black woman is a love and a longing to be accepted by them. And if I am to teach my people how to walk, to get out the stroller and walk, to get off the training wheels and walk, you cannot be there ready to catch us. And if that means we got to fall flat on our face, it's better that we fall on our face and know what it feels like so it doesn't happen again than to keep falling in your damn hands year after year after year after year and stand on the bottom. Because even when white people come amongst you, they help you to a point, y'all. But there is a glass ceiling with their help. The minute you start to equalize, they step away from it. Look at the abolition movement. William Lloyd Garrison, so-called white father of abolition. When the 13th Amendment was passed and they ended slavery, Frederick Douglass and Robert Purvis, right here from Philadelphia, buried in a cemetery there in Germantown and Clearfield, told William Lloyd Garrison that we cannot dissolve the American Anti-Slavery Society because black people, although the chains are off, still not free. You know what that white man told him? He said, my work is done. And he left. And they kept the organization running for another 10 years. So the question becomes, why did the American Anti-Slavery Society last for another 10 years after slavery? Why would you have an anti-slavery movement still in existence after slavery? Because slavery is not about physical restraint. Slavery is about mental control. In fact, I would make the case that if I have to put you in chains, you are not yet my slave. If I gotta put you in chains, you're not mine yet. And when I talk to young people, they don't understand this. They say, we don't understand this mental slavery thing. So I show them pictures of slavery, real pictures, nobody in chains. They say they're not slaves. I say, yes, they are slaves. Why they don't have chains? Because the mind is already owned. It's the mental thing. And that's what we thought to realize. See, when slavery ended, they took the chains off. But the conditioning was not undone. What did Malcolm say? If you stick a knife in my back and pull it out halfway, that's not progress. You pull it out all the way, that ain't progress. Malcolm said healing the wound that the knife started was progress. So the wound, the psychological scars that we have as a result of servitude was never taken away. It is totally mental. You don't believe me? Christmas and Kwanzaa coming up.
Okay. See what Santa Claus show up.
Christmas and Kwanzaa. From Black Friday, and I don't know how the hell it's black because the only people who get the money is white. But from Black Friday to New Year's Day, black people in Philadelphia last Christmas spent $3 billion. I didn't say million. I didn't say million. I said billion. But the next day, they will get up and cry and say, we need a high school. We need a hospital. We need jobs. We need an airplane. We need a ship. We need our own neighborhood police. We need a supermarket. You understand what I'm saying? Because in slavery, you were taught to do what? When a slave hired himself out after he was done working for his master, he was taught that you only spend that money to enjoy yourself. This is key. Read the slave narratives. Read the slave narratives. Whenever you got paid, you cannot use that money for the benefit of the family. Never. In fact, on most plantations, if you did not get drunk on Saturday night, if you did not get drunk, the master would buy you a keg of alcohol and make you drink the whole damn thing. And would tell you, I better never ever catch you on a Saturday thinking instead of drinking.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So even now, 142 years later, excess money and use it for what? Have fun. Blind wigs. 20 pairs of sneakers. $65,000 trucks that won't be worth half of that in 5 years. Look at us, y'all. And white folks laugh at us because they say, damn, they keep begging us. They got the wherewithal to do it, but there is no sense of dignity and pride and integrity. That stuff that make you get up and go. Okay. But a China man, or a Korea man, or an Indian man will come here and in 2 years run your whole damn neighborhood. Now don't get me wrong, he gets help. Yes, they give them loans. Yes, they give them a foot up. But so what There is no excuse for black people to be grossing $850 billion a year, making you the 10th richest group on the face of the earth, for you to give it all back to the person who gave it to you.
Lost their mind.
Which is why I think that to put forth the reparations fight now is a bad idea. Why? Because a court battle is a war. And in a war, you never go to war unless you first have your resources and your troops in order. So if we go for the reparations fight now, and if we win, we won't get half as much as what we would have got because we're disorganized. See, there's three things white people respect. We don't understand this. But there's three things that white people respect. Blood, money, and numbers. Blood, money, and numbers. You can forget about the blood, because in order to fight a physical war, you must have a base which is secure that you can retreat to so you can prep up and get the hell back out. Part of the reason why the Panthers got destroyed, despite all the agents and everybody else in, because they were forced to fight a war with no home base. See, when Africa fought out of colonialism, Kwame Nkrumah would allow the Nigerians in Togo and Benin and Liberia to escape to Ghana as a home base to get ready and go back and fight. Okay? In South Africa, they allow Botswana and Namibia to come into there as a home base to re-up. We don't have nowhere to go and re-up. Canada ain't going to help you. Mexico ain't going to help you. I don't give a damn how dark they are. They don't see themselves as you.
That's right.
So my issue with reparations is get organized first. Why? Because if you lose the court battle, you got to be able to say that I got 2 million black men and women outside who ain't going home unless they get this.
Right.
What black leader you know can do that? Now, Minister Farrakhan brought 1 million of us together. He has the ability to do that. And I think the Million Man March was a beautiful example of unity. I was there, I loved it. But what we need now is an international movement for Pan-African uplift. It cannot be an isolated movement of blacks. And one of my biggest criticisms of black organizations on this continent is they have no Pan-African program at all. How in the hell you expect to get anything done when you are exclusively relying on yourself and not networking with your biological, natural kin on the other 6 continents? It makes no sense. When I was in Nigeria, and I tell everybody this story, I met with King, and I said, look, and I want everybody in here to make sure I get my flyer because we're taking a trip to Nigeria next summer. A serious convention we have.
All right.
But anyway, I told him I want to set up a program so Africans in America can buy land. He said, I was wondering what took y'all this long. Do you know that in Nigeria, $1 US is 118 Naira? Do you know that in Senegal, $1 US is 181 Senegalese money? In Ethiopia, it's 142? Do you know that? You know what you can do with your money in Africa? And they begging for our development? But all we worried about is the domestic America? No! I do not believe that everybody look out for themselves, because the sum is always greater than its parts. Always greater than its parts. I always ask the question, most of our black men in prison are there why? Because they couldn't get a job and they was forced to do something else. Some of them have the skills, but they can't use them because they won't get a job where they ain't got the piece of paper. What if Nigeria? What if Ghana? What if Congo? What if South Africa sent 10 ships over here and said to America, we want every one of our brothers in prison on these ships, we're going to bring them back home and they'll be able to build for their own people and not yours. What if every brother was able to leave prison who had a skill and go help build up Africa? Look at that. You mean to tell me they locked up because they can't find a job when the whole continent of Africa can use that knowledge and wisdom?
That's right.
I'm telling you, if I wasn't working on my doctorate, and if I didn't have my daughter, and if I didn't need to look after my mother, because I'm the oldest boy, I can't leave my mom. If I go, she got to come. I would have never came back. See, CNN has you thinking. CNN has you thinking that the whole Africa's in war. You got 53, 54 nations, y'all. And yes, you have pockets of warfare. But just because there's a fight in Southwest Philadelphia don't mean you in danger right here.
Right.
And you also got to understand that the fighting that goes on in Africa is manipulated by America anyway. Wherever there's a war, there's resources to be stolen.
Right.
Show me a fight in Africa where there ain't no resources to be stolen. The World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, and the Trilateral Commission, and the group, and the Bilderbergers, and the Order, which is popularly called Skull and Bones, but that's not their name, it's just the Order of Yale, and a whole bunch of other groups go into Africa, finance both sides, both tribes that they created. Most of these tribes that fight were created on colonialism by brothers and sisters who was taught that one was better than the other. That's what happened in Rwanda, the massacre. Those weren't natural tribes. The government came in, the colonializers came in and treated this group favorably, taught this group unfavorably, and when they stepped off, clash. He had nothing to do with it. The white man is master of creating the ticking time bomb and getting the hell out of Dodge so he can't get implicated. He does it in our neighborhood every day. Who brings the guns in?
Right.
Who brings the drugs in?
Right.
Okay? Gary Webb, white reporter from the LA Times, got a book out called Secret Alliance, Dark Alliance, I'm sorry. He uses government documentation to show you how Ronald Reagan and every president before him and after him have been dealing in drugs, sending it directly into the hopeless black community to finance undercover wars abroad. The only reason why America is upset with Colombia ain't because they're selling drugs. They're mad because they won't invest in Wall Street. The American economy uses $500 billion worth of drug money every year. Do you know that the stock market would crash if it wasn't for drugs? And now I ain't talking about, so we got a war on crime. No, you don't. You got a war on the extermination of black people who failed to realize that just because slavery over, you are still the enemy. As I wrap this up. Couple things. Firstly, on October 12th, at the H&H Community Development Center Banquet Hall at 20th and Haynes. If you don't remember it, don't worry, just email me. There's going to be a celebration and recognition of the life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I was asked to participate. There's several brothers and sisters on here who are going to be dealing with different aspects of the life and works of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I'm going to be dealing with the psychological benefit of his program. See, a lot of times people get caught up in the religious particulars. They say things like, well, he said that a black man named Yakub drafted the European. There ain't no proof of that. Well, we from the last tribe of Shabazz. There ain't no proof of that. The white man gave you a white Jesus with no proof at all, and you ain't said a damn word about it. Okay? Okay? And still don't question it right now. In fact, your mega churches built from the ground, $10 million mortgages, and they Jesus is white. What excuse do they have? What excuse do they have? Now, in their defense, I know, as a psychologist, that if they put a black, purple, nappy-head, big-lip, broad-nosed Jesus in the church, they would have no members. They would have no members because black people are just as stupid in color worship today as we was in slavery. In fact, there's books out on it now. I think a sister just did a book on color worship in the black community. Remember how I just gave them statistics about how white men are still greater than 90% of most high-level executives? Do you know that amongst people of color who do reach that point, 75% and higher are of paper bag complexion or light? 75% or higher. Look at your principals, your black lawyers, CEOs, politicians, paper bag or lighter. And believe it, statistically, there are just as many black-skinned Africans as there are tan skins. Just as many. But the black skins don't get it. When I was in Ethiopia, they kept the black skinned Ethiopians hidden. I had to go out into the woods to find them. Everybody I saw was tan, who was mixed with the Arab blood and the Mussolini blood when they invaded Ethiopia in the 1900s. Yeah. The black ones ain't nowhere in the airport unless they moving luggage. So even within the race, we still got this hierarchy. And we got to do away with that. As somebody who follows the teachings of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, I don't make differences between black people based on complexion, education, religion, nationality, language, or anything else.
Word.
A black person who has a European mother or European father are just as African as anybody else. We cannot blame our own for decisions and actions that were done before they were brought into this world. They're not responsible for that. You can't play the percentage test. Because everybody, a lot of us got somebody else in us. My great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was raped by the slave master. So I got white man in me. My ancestors prior to that rape were blue, black, jet black. Okay? So does it mean I'm not African because some sixth ancestor, if I find him, I'm gonna kick him up in the ground. You understand? Rape the grandma. We all got that. That's why we're tannish. And I don't want to give the impression that there's Africans who are not blue black, because in the continent, we come in all shapes and sizes of color. It's just that those of us who are the descendants of slaves, and not all of us were, but those of us who were brought from West Africa mainly, which are the blackest on the continent. And believe me when I tell you, because when I was in Ethiopia, they were tan. When I was in South Africa, different colors. When I came to Senegal, Nigeria, it was totally black.
Okay.
And it was our phenotype.
Okay.
And when I say that, I mean I see the nose of my mother and the eyes of my aunt.
Right.
And the lips of my brother. It was clear where we came from. Clear where we came from. In fact, one of the things that we're going to do when we get to Nigeria next summer, we're going to go to Badagry, which is one of the states in Nigeria. Conference will be in the Nugu state. But Badagry, which is a 2-hour ride, they actually have a slave fort where a lot of us come from. Believe it or not, there's a place down in the south, it's in South Carolina or Georgia, that's called Igbo Landing, I-B-O. Or should I say I-G-B-O. The Igbo people, okay, lost a lot of their own on the transatlantic slave trade. In Nigeria, you got the Igbo, the Hausa, and the Yoruba. And they fight each other, just like the West Philadelphia fight the North Philadelphia, and the Christian don't like the Muslim, and the black one don't like the yellow one, and the yellow one think they better than the tan one. You know what? Marcus Garvey said that black people were cursed with petty differences. And I totally agree with him. The stuff that keeps us apart are totally fabricated concepts.
Yeah, that's right.
The stuff that we fight is not stuff that is biologically based or inert. They're fabricated concepts. When I was in college, this Greek society didn't like this Greek society. This fraternity didn't like this. All this stuff is made up and y'all fighting over made up stuff. But nobody wants to come together over what we really are, which is the Africans. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. And the problem with religions, the way we interpret them, please understand this, because I want to be clear. I don't see religion as our problem. It's the leaders who misinterpret it in a way that makes us passive and integrationist. So you got to remember that many of our great leaders were religious people. Whether you look at Marcus Garvey, you look at Delaney, you look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, whoever you look at, they had a religious foundation. That ain't the enemy. The enemy was those who took over, who were in the people but not of the people. And they interpreted the Bible in a way that would make you passive and soft. And they interpreted the Quran in a way that would make you passive and soft. I was born and raised Muslim, but you don't see me in the mosque too much because I can't go anywhere with a lot of black people and ain't nobody talking about their political struggle. I can't take it. You see what I'm saying? I'm fasting this Ramadan, I do that. I try to get my 5 prayers in the day, I'll do that. All of that, that's not a problem. I'm Muslim, I love Islam, but I don't love Negroism. And I always get in debate with my Sunni brothers, you understand, who think that the Arab is their brother. And I got to remind them that there was an Arab slave trade before there was a European one. In fact, it is older and longer because it ain't stopped yet, and they still over there trading them right now. And I ain't heard not one Negro imam say a word about it, because that's your brother. I'm not growing a long beard. I'm not rolling my pants up. I don't have a problem with those who do it. I'm not knocking them. But for me, that has nothing to do with who I am. I don't mind going to my grave as somebody who didn't live as a good Muslim. I can live with that. I don't mind folks saying, you know, he really don't follow the Sunnah and this and that. I can handle that. But what I cannot handle is going to my grave and folks saying he sold his race out. See, for me, God created all the religions.
That's right.
And they all come out of Africa.
That's right.
So it ain't no need to fight over which one is better than the others because they are all ours.
That's right.
Every single one. Look at Muhammad's ancestry. Look at Moses' ancestry. Look at Jesus' ancestry. All African people.
That's right.
Every last one. And I don't know their thoughts, but I'm quite sure that if them 3 men was here today, they would not be fighting amongst one another. In fact, they would see eye to eye on everything. You understand? When you deal with religion, and this is something the ministers try not to accept, religion is an extension of the political struggle. It is used for it or against it.
That's right.
You cannot go into the church and say we are not involved in what's going on out there. Because the mere fact that you have just chosen not to get involved in political struggle automatically makes you an accomplice and an ally of the enemy of the community.
That's right.
You gotta understand, any black person who don't feel it is their responsibility to get involved with the survival of their people is automatically an ally to the enemy.
That's right.
Automatically. It's like being on a football team and I say I'm not blocking today. That means whoever got this line coming straight through. They coming straight through. Now I can act like I'm not helping them. I can act like it. But the bottom line, the fact that I ain't blocking today automatically helps the other team.
Okay.
Automatically. There is no sideliners in this struggle. Ain't nobody on the side. Nobody on the side. And we got to make sure we don't allow people to think that they are above the struggle. You're either on our side or you ain't. That's right. And we don't have no allies but ourselves.
Hey, this is Big J. Again, that was Dr. Umar Johnson. We thank you for tuning in to Urban Watch. We thank you for taking an hour of your day to listen to us. Please check back with us on a weekly basis. Our goal is to bring this type of material, this enlightening material on a weekly basis. So check 5.com for dates and air times. Be sure to listen to my brother First Degree on his show Fahrenheit Radio, airing nightly. And we look forward to spending an hour with you again next week. Peace.
He just talking, you listen. 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 He just talking, you listen.